The next story. Michael Moore. Michael Moore, not usually someone I side with politically, because he usually ends up telling you just to vote for the Democratic Party, lesser of two evils-ism, and I don't do that. So I usually don't side with him politically. But Michael Moore had some things to say here and some advice to give to Joe Biden. And there is something that he said in this interview on CNN that I jumped up and down when I heard him say that Palestinians are also Semites. And I said, yes, finally, somebody said it on mainstream media. I was doing a little dance here. Let's go ahead and dive into this story. Michael Moore has advice for Joe Biden. Yikes. Ouch.
My source tonight, Academy Award-winning filmmaker Michael Moore, who has documented nationwide protests and has also been a part of them himself. And Michael, it's great to have you back on the show. I just wonder, as we've been covering this, and you really saw it, hit a high point today at universities all across the United States from coast to coast. How do you think that these schools should be approaching these protests?
In the opposite way that most of them are doing it. I mean, what's great about the democracy and free speech, freedom of assembly, freedom of not having a state religion. This is what those who came here, the white people who came here, are wanting to escape that. And so the lesson teaching the children of today, in this case Gen Z, that we will tase you, we will beat you, we will club you. If you, none of them are committing any acts of violence. None of them are destroying the university. The worst, maybe in some people's minds, they're doing is holding signs that say "Free Palestine," or from the river to the sea. This is one that's constantly being thrown out there. Oh, look at this! This sign is frightening all the students from the river to the sea. And it's like, well, why don't you talk to them? Because actually, first of all, large numbers of these students are Jewish students who are with the Palestinian students.
So everybody heard that? See, it took Michael Moore to say this on mainstream media because most people, they're not repeating this rhetoric. Kaylin wouldn't have said this if it wasn't, Michael wasn't on this show. So that's important for people to understand.
Who together are forming these encampments. I don't know if that's been covered very much. I saw this one instance where the Palestinian students inviting the Jewish students into the encampment. And then the next day, they had a little nighttime entertainment in the encampment. And the Palestinian students decided to do a Jewish folk dance for their fellow protesters who are Jewish students.
Yeah, but Michael, can I ask you on that? Because there are some people definitely sitting at home right now watching this who say, okay, but I've also heard Jewish students on air here at CNN and in other interviews saying, well, I'm hearing anti-Semitic rhetoric at this, and it's not all just, a kind of kumbaya thing, that there are moments where Jewish students have said they felt harassed, they felt unsafe on campus going to class. I mean, I think that's the question of where is the line in, yes, it's some schools like Yale where we've seen a Jewish student who wrote for CNN today saying he was sitting in with a pro-Palestinian protester, but where's the line between protesting and free speech, but also Jewish students feeling safe going to class?
Right. Well, first of all, the protesters who are there supporting the Palestinian people and their right to be free, I would guess probably 98% of them are not saying anything that's anti-Semitic because they don't believe in anti-Semitism, in part because the Palestinian people are Semites. So to be anti-Semitic.
Yes. And I jumped up and down when I heard that, and I said, somebody finally got the opportunity to say it on mainstream media. And look at Caitlin's expression. Look at the expression on her face when he said that. Look at the way that she looked. Oh no, he said that. Yes, people have to educate themselves.
Would be if you speak against Jewish people, and yes, anti-Semitism is, I think, one of the most horrific things. The way people have behaved. Jews have been suffering as victims of this for 5,000 plus years. And everybody needs to stand up against that and fight it and speak against it. But what's going on, and I noticed that there was a report, I think I read in the LA Times today and also on ABC News where they were interviewing students saying they were being harassed and the Hamas flags are flying. And ABC and the LA Times did their own investigation trying to find at these college demonstrations one Hamas flag that the protesters were carrying. And there were none. This is all a made up thing. Just like I said, the river to the sea. Can I just read? This is from the charter of the Likud party. That's the right-wing party that Netanyahu is the head of. 1977, I'm reading direct quote from the charter of the Likud right-wing Israeli party. And it says the following: the right of the Jewish people to the land of Israel is eternal and indisputable. Between the sea and the Jordan, there will only be Israeli sovereignty. That's their own charter, the Likud party.
So you see, this is something, again, that, Netanyahu has said, and he said this publicly as well. But notice mainstream media doesn't push back when Netanyahu says it, right?
That's where this river to the sea, because the real victims in these last decades have been the Palestinian people not being able to have their freedom, not being able to live in a democracy, not having their rights.
Yeah.
And why so many Jewish students are joining with Palestinian students, because they know it's wrong too. That's why the majority, I think, of Israelis certainly want Netanyahu out of there. Your own polls have shown that.
Well, I want to ask you,
and I think that,
I'm glad you brought up polls. And one.
So again, notice how she started to try to interrupt him once he talked about the suffering that the Palestinian people have been through.
I should say that it is happening on some campuses. We saw the one student who was barred from campus after he said in a video in January that all Zionists should be killed, or that Zionists should be killed. That was something that was spread around.
That was that one incident. So why are they using that one incident to categorize how the rest of these protests have gone? Let's think about this for just a second, folks. How is CNN any different than Fox News at this point? Because when we go back and we look at the Black Lives Matter protests, remember how Fox News commentators were smearing the protesters and they said they were all violent, which wasn't the case. Most of the protests were peaceful. There were also people that were not a part of those protests that pretended to be, that were going out there like wrecking property and stuff like that as well. So CNN actually criticized, right-wing media for having that framing of those protests. But notice how when it's now about Israel, now CNN is doing the same thing. And Fox News is still doing this too. All of them are doing it. CNN, Fox News, MSNBC, they're all using the smaller incidents, right? The fewer incidents of violence. They are using that to categorize the protest movement as a whole. That is very telling.
And I understand, obviously, it's complicated, and schools clearly are grappling with how to handle this.
Yeah, and that kid's a knucklehead, and he's now apologized for it. I've been to Giant Stadium, where I can't tell you how many times I've had to listen to white people shouting using negative words about black players, using those epithets. Mm-hmm. Does that mean all football players are one thing or another, or white people are? Well, we know there's enough of them. Bad stuff is said in this country constantly because we have had a historic problem with bigotry, with racism, with all kinds of bad things said about minority groups, and including and especially Jews. And
let me pause here for a second. And I want to give you an example of what he just said, right? So the Red Sox, Fenway Park, has been known to have those incidents that he was talking about. In fact, one of the more recent ones I remember made national news, where there was a baseball player, I forget which team he was playing for at the time, but there was a baseball player, black baseball player, who was called the N-word, and somebody threw a banana at him or banana peel at him while he was on the field. That happened at Fenway Park. Fenway is not, it's not unusual. It's not an unknown thing. At Fenway. It was also the Red Sox. They were also the last team to actually integrate. And this was years after Jackie Robinson had broken the color barrier in baseball. But anyway, that's a whole other story. Anyhow, I think the point that Michael is making here, when those incidents happened, you want to know what the response was? I was like, oh, that's upset. That's messed up. That's embarrassing. But the way that the city of Boston chose to respond to that was, let's name one of the streets next to Fenway Park after David Ortiz. Let's change the name from Yawkey Way to David Ortiz Way, which, to be fair, David Ortiz, one of the best players here, right? Probably one of the best players like ever. But changing the name from Yawkey to David Ortiz doesn't change the beliefs and the rhetoric, that happens at Fenway Park and will continue to happen at Fenway Park. We're looking at a deeper rooted issue. So Yawkey, who was the owner of the Red Sox, was very racist. That's why the team was the last to integrate in the league. So I get what they were doing, but the point that Michael Moore is trying to make here is that these things do happen. You are going to have these incidents happen. However, if you don't get to the deep rooted issue as to why these things are happening and you're just changing street signs, those things are going to continue. However, those incidents tend to be far and fewer, especially as time goes on. You can't use that to characterize and then generalize the entire, sports world. So you can't use those incidents that happen. You can't use that to basically generalize all of the protests that are happening around this issue. That's simply not fair. Once again, most of the protests are peaceful.
That is not allowed. And all the organizers of all these demonstrations, I've talked to a lot of them. They've been in touch with me. And I have to tell you, they are the salt of the earth. They are kind and generous. They want to work with Jews. They want to live in peace.
Yeah.
They do not support what Hamas did on October 7th.
Exactly. I mean, capturing the nuance here and the complex nature of this is one thing. But you brought up
Or maybe you could get up out of your seat, Caitlin, and you can leave the studio and you can actually go to these college campuses and talk to these students yourself and not only bring on students of one side. Maybe you could do that. Maybe if some of these CNN commentators actually got up out of their seat every once in a while and actually talk to the people in the street, like some of us in independent media actually do, then maybe this will be a different story. So there's that. Why does Michael Moore have to be the one going out there doing the work for you?
Whole about Israel's leadership, but you're wearing a Michigan hat right now. One, I won't hold you against that because I'm an Alabama fan, as you know. But two, there is a CNN poll. Apologies. There's a CNN poll that showed today 81% of voters who are under the age of 35 disapprove of how President Biden has been handling this war. I mean, we're seeing it on campuses. There is a question of what we're going to see in November. I wonder what you think he should be doing differently to change those numbers.
Thank you for asking that question, Caitlin. This is why I was when I got the call asking if I'd like to come on tonight, I really was coming on. I know we're speaking to millions of people, but I'd like to speak to one particular individual, and that is President Biden. I wanted to say this on your show tonight, that his chance of not being reelected, I think at this point is so great because of those numbers, because he's losing the youth vote. He's lost the Arab American vote in Michigan. So even Michelle Goldberg, in a column in the New York Times last month, said that you lose Michigan, you lose the election. I am fighting to make sure that doesn't happen. I am trying to save Joe Biden, because as soon as he does the right thing, and if you're listening, watching Mr. Biden, fellow Catholic, although some will say recovering in my case, but still, we are Catholics, and the Pope is right on this. We need an immediate ceasefire. It is wrong. A mass slaughter of innocents, of children, of women, of the elderly is a sin. It is absolutely against what we believe in. I know you know that too. I know that's why you're not really happy with what Netanyahu has done here. And you can stop the killing tonight. You pull the plug, you close the bank, you shut it down. Doesn't mean we're not going to support Israel, protect Israel, absolutely, all of that. But that's not what's going on here. It is a mass slaughter. It's madness, President Biden, and you know this. And I speak to you as a fellow seminarian to the Catholic priesthood, that's me, that this is wrong. This is not what we believe in. And I think, after World War II, we are all in the shadow of the Holocaust. We are all sons and daughters of that era. And what did we want to do? We wanted to make sure that no Jew would ever have to suffer again or be killed again. And so everybody got behind the idea that they should have this home. But the land wasn't taken from the Nazis, the Germans. We didn't give them Bavaria. We took land from people who, not a single Palestinian built an oven at Auschwitz. Not a single Palestinian historically ran the Spanish Inquisition. Not a single Palestinian turned away boatloads of German Jewish refugees that tried to dock in Boston, New York, Miami, prohibited, tried to escape before they were all exterminated. And we turned them away, we, the United States. And I'm just saying, you're right to be, as you say, you care and you love the Jewish people, obviously, yes, but not this. This is mass extermination. When you carpet bomb a civilian population, and by those who are watching this, that's your tax dollars and my tax dollars. That means we funding this. We are responsible. We have to do this, and we have to. And so, but I'm sorry, Caitlin. I just want to make this because Democrats are going, oh, don't be saying this. We got to win the election.
So I had to pause it there for just a second. I didn't want to interrupt him too much here. You see, this is what Michael Moore does. He was really good up into that I'm trying to save Joe Biden part. Why are you trying to save Joe Biden? People have to want to save themselves. It just at this point, you need to let Joe Biden fall. At this point, and I say this, even if there was some magically tomorrow Joe Biden called for a ceasefire, I would tell you all, you do not owe your vote to Joe Biden at this point. The way that he has ignored the young people, the way that he has just turned the other cheek, the way that he has said that we will always, support Israel, etc. The way that he just lied about those protests, and he's been lying his entire presidency. I would say you don't owe Joe Biden anything, even if he were to make that decision tomorrow. Joe Biden does not deserve to be reelected as president of this country. I said the same thing when Donald Trump was running for reelection as well. He does not deserve it. And I don't understand why you feel you're trying to save him, Michael Moore. If Joe Biden wanted to be saved, he would do the right thing. He's not really looking to be saved. This is where people like Michael Moore lose me, because he still wants you to vote blue no matter who. You actually have third party and independent candidates that are running that are correct on this particular issue where Joe Biden has lost a lot of support from, that actually have name recognition. Why are you still trying to save Joe Biden? The right thing to do, if people, do want to vote, the right thing for you to do, Michael Moore, is to encourage that young base, all of them that are out there protesting, to show up and vote for the candidates who are right on this issue. That's the right thing for you to do. And it's like, oh, well, Sabby, they're not going to win. It's just going to be Democrats, Republicans. And then that means we'll get Donald Trump. Well, then that's just what happens, Mike. You got to start somewhere. At the beginning of the civil rights movement, did they think they were going to win that year? You think they thought that? You think they thought with this first sit-in, this boycott that we're doing, we're going to win? That took time. And if you're only willing to do something, if you know for sure you're going to win, are you really a fighter? So people got to think about this. What is Michael Moore actually trying to do? Because he's saying all these things, but then come November, Michael Moore is still going to tell you got to support Joe Biden. I mean, it's just, for me, this is a moral issue. This is not about a red team or a blue team. This is about morality. And I personally would not feel right voting for anyone that is complicit in this genocide. Not one. We'll let him finish up here.
But we're going to lose the election. We're going to lose Michigan if we don't turn this around. If President Biden doesn't turn this around, that is going to do more to put Trump back in the White House. And I refuse to have Donald Trump back in the White House. So what are we all going to do? How are we going to fix this? There's a simple way right now to try to bring back some of the young people. And I know we're out of time. Thank you for letting me say that and speak directly to the president, who I hope is watching.
So it's, I don't know, what else to say, people, but it's just, maybe Biden just got to lose. It just is what it is at this point. And I don't want Donald Trump either, but at some point you got to stop trying to just go along with the flow. Just because you got to stop this sometimes. I'm so tired of this. Every time I turn around, Michael Moore is popping up to tell people we got to vote blue no matter who. It just, the guy who made all these documentaries talking about the economy and talking about, how this country needs to improve in so many ways when you compare it to other countries. The guy who made all these documentaries calling out all the BS and foreign policy decisions made by the US government. But he still wants you to vote for those people who made those foreign policy decisions. You catch my drift?